First things we have to talk about when we talk about mobile search is not necessarily the size of it, but that, you know, it's different. We have all these searches happening, but we know as SEOs that it's not the same environment. So, and here we are at our first poll.
Absolutely. So I'll be launching this poll momentarily. First question, and I guess this is a trick question. Is tablet SEO?
I kind of answered it already.
Is tablet SEO the same as mobile SEO? Please select the answer to the following. Yes or no.
So, kind of answered it, not truly answered it. So.
Okay, cool. So we have about 60% have voted thus far. Let everybody get in. Vote yes or no. I'm really interested in hearing this because I've seen very different tablet SEO-oriented experiences across device, really based upon coding. So it looks like we have 80% of you have answered. That is amazing. Closing the poll right now. I'll share the results. And 71% say that tablet SEO is not the same as mobile SEO. So I'll hand it back off to you, Anne.
Great. So they would, hello. Great. Yes. So the answer is no. It is not the same. So I was actually talking about desktop, not tablet. So desktop is different, tablet is different, mobile is different. They're actually all their own different animals. Apple TV is also different. Parallax, you know, smartwatches, they're all different. Each platform is a little bit different in terms of how we target it, how we use it, and what we're going to see. But it is a very common misconception that tablet, phablets, and mobile are actually the same when that's not the case. So just 1 second. Sorry guys. Oh, there we go. So I kind of lost my mouse there, sorry. Disappeared on me. So mobile search, it's not the same. We've talked about that. So by the numbers, 60% of organic search, 62% actually, is different than on the smartphone. And so this trend is only expected to increase. You know, sorry, I'm having a dialogue here. Okay, sorry guys, I'm having a little technical problem there. There we go.
Okay.
Back. There we are, sorry. So anyway, so we were talking about 62% of organic searches display different versus smartphone. We know that this is going to increase. So, you know, we know the tablet's different, we know the desktop's different. So what does this really mean? How do we bring it home conceptually? So I've come up with a concept that I like to call the nth screen. And when you're developing your digital presence, you need to think about it in terms of an infinite screen, infinite screens. And so what got me started on this concept, it's actually kind of a funny story. I had my pupils dilated for a routine eye exam, which I know everybody loves. You know, you got these drops and you can't really read for a couple of hours. Well, what I really couldn't see were screens. And so I was in a familiar place and I knew how to get home. But when I went to the train station, I couldn't read the screen telling me the train times. When I was looking up at the monitor, when I got to the train station with the TV and the news, I couldn't read that. I couldn't read my phone. And so it just sort of made me painfully aware how many screens were around me and how my life was changed because of it. You know, I counted 5 different screens in my bedroom alone. And so when you start to think about it, you know, we as SEOs can't just focus on a platform anymore. That's not really where we are. There are very specific use cases where we might be, but those are very rare. So, you know, the nth screen is really ultimately, it's going to be the merging of devices, people, places to create shared interactive experiences. And so this is actually really exciting for us as SEOs because it allows us to have opportunity to expand everywhere. It's a part of everything we do. Our screen, you know, everywhere there's a screen and there's internet connectivity, there is search. And so it's changed the game for us in many ways, but it's actually very, very freeing to not worry about independent platforms. And I actually have a lot of people who have argued with me and said, well, I actually have, not that great mobile traffic, so I don't need to optimize for mobile yet. But that's actually a misnomer, because it's, you haven't optimized for it, therefore that traffic that's coming to you isn't going to convert. It's not going to do well because maybe you're not giving those people a great experience. So it's a fallacy to think that that means that mobile doesn't matter to you, because we know that it does. And that if you optimize for it, if you go with a responsive design, for example, we know that you're going to see better results. So I think it helps to have just a few mobile tenants for the end screen. So don't develop for a platform. Think omni-platform. Think nth. Be fast or go home. We know for a fact, Google has actually said that 40% of users abandon any site that takes more than 3 seconds to load on mobile. And that's really interesting because the average load time of a web page on mobile right now is about 8 seconds. So that's a long 5-second divide there, and that's where we're losing mobile users, and companies are losing mobile users because they're not optimizing properly. So speed is of the utmost importance for mobile SEO. Everybody says think about the user, but I would go a step further and I say empathize with the user. Test your own site. Use your own site. Go beyond the home page. A lot of errors on mobile with CSS are actually visual and cannot be debugged with standard tools. So while it's tempting to automate things, and you can automate a lot in your marketing processes and your development processes, but one thing I would not is mobile usability. You have to check your own pages beyond the home page to see what happens. Those visual errors will not kick off in your tool consoles, and those will cost you in terms of clicks off of your site, people not converting. It can result in lost revenue for your companies. So it's really worth the extra time to test beyond what we're used to testing in the desktop world. And another concept that I've noticed in my own research for my book, and as well as working at my agency, that the fold has been an obsession for online marketers for a long time. The fold used to be the dividing line, the Mason-Dixon between converting and peril. But I actually would argue that the fold is not as new as 10 years old. I think that getting attention to get the turn of a web page is not a new thing. The turn of a page, I should say. Turning pages have always been effort. And here is a standard heat map that you're looking at from days of old of how internet marketers would look at activity. But we know that they stopped making scrolls in 1st century BC when Buddhist monks took the idea for books from India through Afghanistan to China. So what's funny about mobile users is that we're actually reverting back to scrolls. We always, now we're all so used to books, but really scrolls were where we started with the written word. And so mobile behavior is breaking all we know about desktop user behavior, and we're actually reverting back to these scrolls, which were cool thousands of years ago. So old is actually new again conceptually on mobile in terms of usability. But it's also important to note that what's visible on the page without action is what's going to get us the scroll. So we always want what we have showing when people first hit the page to make people want to expend the effort to the scroll. So I say be worth the trouble of scrolling. The most viewed area, so the fold is going away, but we know statistically from advertising studies and other things that have come out that our average mobile fold-ish, sort of like where people will scan for the initial load is about 550 pixels. And, the rules have changed completely. And this is what makes speeds this much more important because people aren't waiting necessarily. Most people will just start scrolling. And that's unfortunate for those who have slow load times because people are never going to make the effort to scroll to them. So coincidentally, more than 3 billion in pizza has been delivered via Domino's mobile app. That's a lot. And that actually, that yummy detour there takes us into something else I find very interesting. which is local search. One of the strongest and best cases for mobile SEO is local search, because nearly half of all consumers who do a local search on their phone also visited the store that offered the same product within about a day. Consumers are increasingly using their phone to locate purchases in-store and then make the purchase close by, not necessarily online. So that makes multi-channel, omni-channel attribution that much more important. But it's really important for us conceptually to consider the local factors. Because more than half of us want to use an address or phone number that we see within an ad, which we expect to be customized to us and tailored to us. Users are getting spoiled, and so they're wanting those experiences to be seamless, and they're wanting to get a coupon. They're wanting to get an experience that drives them into the store. And then 70%, I'm sure it's no surprise, use local search to get directions or call a local business that they're planning to visit. So, great. What do I do? Well, I'm not going to leave you hanging because, you know, we want to help you. So here are, I think, some of the most important mobile technical SEO considerations. So a lot of people ask us at my agency, do I build an app or do I not build an app? And so I think a lot of organizations are struggling with this, but I think when done right, apps can become, you know, almost prolific in generating revenue for future apps if you have the resources to do that. And it is possible to monetize quickly if you have the right resources to deploy. However, you know, too many apps fall into obscurity because they don't have the muscle to promote it, and, you know, they're not really offering feature functionality beyond what a web page would on a desktop. If you're not using the gyroscope, the GPS, the camera, any of the phone's built-in hardware, you're probably better off to go native and save yourself the heartache. Because unless you're using the phone's unique hardware, there's really not that stickiness that users want to see in the mobile environment to continue. You know, it's not going to have the appeal of Snapchat, other apps that are an immersive experience. And then the next is site configurations. Do I go with dynamic or parallel URLs? Well, it depends. It depends on your setup. And so it's really important to understand, you know, what it is that you're trying to achieve and how are you able to best keep your content fresh and updated and fast. And then there are very few arguments to not go responsive. I think responsive pages are the standard now, and you know, so I heavily suggest going responsive on mobile rather than building a separate site. There's really no reason to do that at this point. And, you know, something else I've noticed has pushed us way up on performance has been migration to HTTP2, which is the new updated protocol for HTTP. And you won't necessarily notice in the browser like you will between SSL and non-SSL, like you won't see a difference in the little padlock necessarily, but you will see a performance increase. And so the sites that we've migrated over to HTTP2 have had a tremendous boost in speed and performance overall, and therefore performance in search because users are liking it on mobile. And if you're wondering if you can go to HTTP2, check with your host, because that is something that is handled at the hosting level. So speaking of hosts, I think that of all the places to save money within an organization, hosting is not that place. I think that you should spend the money as much as you can on getting a fast hosting package for mobile. Check your CDNs, your content distribution networks. Make sure that you're not fail-boating your own SEO by giving away content, by using some of these services out there that are very cool, but remember that, you know, when you're hopping between other sites, you know, too many handshakes at the server level will make for heartaches. And choose your packages wisely. Choose something that gives you your own cluster, your own grid. You don't necessarily want to share. There are some sites that can, depending on how the provider's set up, but you should be asking those questions. Who am I sharing a server with? What is your downtime? Do you have downtime? Do you do auto backups? These are things that you can ask, and you could definitely get a clear answer on from your host. If you're going to do redirects, if you're going to use subdomains and other fancy things, make sure you can get a little fancy with it, but you have to make sure with mobile that you get your canonicalization right. If your business is local, invest in local SEO. And actually, a couple months ago, Facebook Instant Articles launched, and it was super exciting. They've had limited availability up until today, but it's an excellent way to serve up your content faster than you can blink with a minimum of resources. So Facebook Instant Articles and Project AMP was created by Google as a way to help mobile users get content faster. And you know, a few of our clients have used these projects, and the ones that have actually done really, really well. The projects allow you to build web pages for static content that render really crazy fast. There's 3 major components to these: AMP HTML, AMP JavaScript, and Google AMP Cache. All right, we're ready for our next poll.
Excellent, thank you. And I see we're going to start talking about AMP, which has me really excited.
Are you amped up?
Oh yeah, I'm amped up. You know, too bad you can't say that about instant articles. Like, you can't say I'm instant articled up, but I'm really amped up.
Exactly. They didn't think. It's really not a too exciting name, is it?
So here you go. Have you deployed Project AMP yet on your site? Yes, no, or what is Project AMP? So if everyone would take the time to please answer, this will help craft the Q&A and probably some of your presentation points moving forward. We have about 72% have answered this far. Let's try to get 75. So I'll do a countdown. 5, 4, 3. It's your last chance. If you haven't voted yet, please vote right now. 2, 1, and I had to close the poll at 74%. So, wow, an overwhelming amount of folks are asking what is AMP. Almost the same have not deployed AMP, and it looks like 7% of the current attendees in the think tank have deployed AMP on their site. So pretty interesting stuff there. What do you think about those results, Anne?
Wow, you know, that's pretty mixed. Well, that's great. I mean, that means that we have a lot to talk about. So, you know, I think I'll back up just 2 seconds then and talk a little bit about what these projects were designed to do. Basically, these larger providers, you know, Facebook, Google, even Apple has gotten on board to create protocols to allow for mobile priority for pages that are optimized in a way. So AMP is Google's project. It actually stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. So you'll see if you search on a mobile phone for news within Chrome, for example, you're going to see in your news carousel, first of all, that there is a carousel organically at the top for news results, and that you can kind of scroll between them, and you're going to actually see a little lightning bolt at the bottom that says AMP, and that's Google's way of letting you know. That you're going to be going ahead and appearing in search. I can't actually take control back of the webinar here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so AMP has a set of qualifications that developers need to follow, and they follow these, they submit them, and then they get into that beautiful news carousel. And so what that means is, you know, you have all this markup, you have these things that you have to follow, and it's all laid out in Google's blog. It's the same for Facebook. It's a little less direct, but they're just an excellent way to serve up your content faster than you can blink with a minimum of resources. You know, syndicated content is one of the most consistent SEO strategies over the last few years, and you know, you take the infrastructure of these larger companies and their reach and links, and we're looking at a really hot new way to drive traffic and get content in front of people faster. So, you know, on the technical level, we've noticed that you know, you can't submit to AMP and have anything missing. Like, you have to have the author field, you have to have the image, all of these things have to be done or it will get rejected. Verbose information is required up front. And there actually are AMP plugins, so if you are on the sort of the more novice side and you've got WordPress deployed, you can actually find there are a number of good AMP plugins for WordPress that will integrate, that will allow you to do some cool things and test out, and actually you can, in most of them, you can preview what it looks like, which I think is really cool, because then you'll know what your page is going to look like, because keep in mind AMP and instant article pages will look a little bit different in search. And so if branding is a big concern for you, definitely you want to preview, because it will slightly change the appearance, because think about it, we're trying to serve a page in 3 seconds versus 8, so some things are going to definitely change. You know, there may be some pushback from your development team because the syntax is a little obscure. Some of the JSON and other things I've heard complaints from the web development community on, but there's a lot of great documentation, and so it's definitely worth the effort and energy to deploy. Now, one of the coolest things I think that mobile SEO has going for it that I think a lot of people don't necessarily know to take advantage of yet is rich snippets, which will add structured data to the appropriate place in your site. And there are different types of snippets. There's product, you can do recipes, there's reviews. So here I am shopping for cat pants. You know, hey, Burning Man's coming up, right? I'm not going, but I hear it's coming. So let's say I want to order some zany cat pants. Well, if we look here and we see, you know, the stars under the navy blue, not the pants that I want, I'll just say, I can see that they got a 4.1 rating out of 29 reviews. So rich snippets are, you know, just adding a little structured data to the appropriate place will allow you to have these richer results. And so these richer responses and results are what people are going to expect to see on Google and other places where they search. So reviews, videos, news articles, which again takes us back to AMP. You know, we know that it gives a richer user experience to the searcher, so therefore, you know, there's really very little reason to not do snippets. And don't be discouraged if you get errors at first. There is a slight debugging process that can happen, and that's okay. You can also preview or test with schema.org and other tools. There are plenty of tools out there that will allow you to test before you launch. And you know, something else I like to always caution people about is that using snippets does not necessarily guarantee 100% that they will be displayed in search. Years ago we had a client that did, you know, online comedy videos and, you know, dramas and other types of videos, and we were not able to get video snippets to appear no matter what we did. Ended up being that they, you know, Google made a decision based on YouTube and other things, and so they kind of downgraded it for other video sites, but that's okay. You know, we knew it was nothing that we'd done. So know that if you do snippets, you test it meticulously. It does not guarantee 100% they're going to be displayed day one. It may take a little bit for it to get crawled. It's okay. You'll get there. And that headlines have actually gotten shorter, so your headlines should never exceed. So we used to have, you know, another 40 characters. So 110 is in the AMP guidelines, and also you have about 100, I would say less than 100 words in your preview as well. So be aware that when you're using it, that you've got to be snappier. Snappier with your snippets. And again, always test before deploying, because, you know, it's better to do this up front than to find later. But only you will know, you know, if you're doing it privately, but it's always better to test before deploying. So, turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. This has been incredibly informational, especially looking at the broad spectrum of mobile search across optimization and coding and all the other micro-snippet features. If you all would like to learn more in person about mobile SEO, mobile search, and the mobile experience, take the time to look into SEJ Summit 2016. It's going to be hosted in New York City on November 2nd. It's our third and final SEJ Summit of the year. We'll have Miley Ohai from Google discussing mobile search, so that will be a nice company presentation to what Anne is doing today. And if you can attend SEJ Summit 2016 on November 2nd in New York, use promo code SEJ for 10% off of your ticket. That includes all early bird ticket and other specials as well. So see you in New York for SEJ Summit. And back to you, Anne.
Wonderful, thank you. Like, ooh, I want to go. Miley's awesome. So ultimately, you know, I think the biggest thing I want to impart is let's help the machines help you. Spend the time and resources on the physical optimizations. More than ever, site structure, navigation, these things matter. You know, take out the trash, optimize that code. Are you loading a bunch of junk CSS that came, you know, with a template? You know, that's not really cool to your users. You know, have you set your cache expirations? You know, think about how to enhance that user experience, and don't cut corners on the optimizations. Deploying, you know, templates out of the box is not really going to cut it anymore in this mobile world. You know, just like those old acid wash jeans, you want to toss out your pop-ups and Flash on mobile. Keeping these older elements will alienate users and send them running. So if you have to utilize ads on your site, there are actually more subtle ways to do this than pop-ups. So now we're going to quickly cover some of my favorite, which is the futuristic stuff. You know, I love emerging platforms and technologies. You know, my thirst and curiosity for knowledge is definitely what led me to become an SEO, and I think a lot of SEOs share that personality trait for sure. I think one of the most exciting things about mobile is voice search. You know, text-to-speech is rising very, very quickly. Nearly a quarter of people in this Zenith Optimedia survey said they used voice search services like Siri, Google Now, Microsoft's Cortana, and of those surveyed, about half are using voice search more today than they did a year ago. And that's something to think about, because Amazon's Alexa has become wildly popular. It's a voice-controlled search for the web, really. It's a piece of hardware that just allows you to speak to it. But for services like Amazon.com, fast ordering, so you know, you can order just talking to this device. And retailers will be well served to optimize their Amazon listings as well for voice command and easy ordering. So we know that, you know, I also read a study recently for the end of 2015 that said that 60% of those using search began just last year, and 41% using voice search began in the last six months. So the these adoption numbers are so rapidly changing. I think we're going to see an even sharper increase in this next year, because you know, one of the best use cases is, you know, someone's driving in their car. It's much safer to use voice. People are not wanting to type queries as much as they were before, because these recognition tools are getting better. So, you know, we know that the queries are also different. So they're conversational. You probably have noticed the rich answers or direct answers that are appearing in search, where Google actually attempts to answer the questions for you, which is a really interesting development for us as SEOs to try and find the right balance of how much do we put out there to answer versus how much do we put out there to get people to the site. So it's like an interesting new challenge for us. I think we should also assume for voice that it's going to increase on mobile and wearable connected home devices. There's so many new smart home devices, and IoT is leading the charge on this, and we should expect that voice is an interface as much as physical, you know, typing search. And then this is, again, a hat tip to Rich Snippets, because they're actually going to help you out optimizing for voice as well. So we know that with advances in machine learning and, you know, computing power, that once the accuracy continues to increase for voice, that's where people are going to go because it's easier. It's always comes down to what is easiest for the user. And I think if we're thinking mobile search, we need to start thinking voice search, especially with all these other devices. I've also, as a futurist, I am very excited about virtual reality and where that's going to lead us for SEO. VR monetization revenues, and this is actually, I think, conservative, expected to reach $4 billion by 2019. I've seen statistics recently that said it would be more like 10 billion. I mean, these are projections, keep in mind, but, again, anywhere where we have screens, where we have users, and where we have connectivity, we're going to have search. And so this is a very exciting time for us as SEOs. Augmented reality is another, and there's actually a VR search engine that I just learned about the other day that I'm excited to try and use. But there's actually an augmented reality search engine that was started by some students at the University of Illinois as a research project to map together different data layers between application and search in the web. And it's very interesting what they're doing, and there are others that are flocking to do the same. So again, think about it in terms of inputs. We've got not just text, we've got visuals, we've got video, we've got images, audio, all these other inputs that are very exciting for us because we can target on these different platforms. And location is currently the strongest use case for AR research and search. So we can expect that this is something that is going to continue to increase, especially as mapping and GPS, other indicators of interest in location are getting stronger for us as marketers, and we have to find ways to get people to those places, right? So some of our more emerging and sort of fringe platforms would be smart TVs, smart watch. I think beacons are really something that a lot of retailers are starting to use, so that they can know when somebody's in a store and serve them a different experience. I think it's really interesting what these different companies are doing, and beacons are going to make it a lot more challenging for marketers in some ways, but it's going to be great for advertisers as well. Users are going to want, discounts, they're going to want tickets, they're going to want access to things and events, they're going to expect a more customized experience moving forward, and so it's our job as SEOs to give it to them. And so my 3 key takeaways for everybody today, in my experience at my agency and researching for my book for mobile, is that speed is king in the world of mobile. You've got 3 seconds, so do the work and you will reap the rewards. And don't build an app just for the sake of it. Give yourself a chance and consider that maybe responsive might be better for you. And also, don't attach yourself too heavily to the idea of a platform. Consider that there are infinite possibilities, how to reach people with all these connected devices and IoT, that there is no platform. It's on the platform. And so if you take these things into consideration, you will win. So, thank you, everybody.
Very cool, very cool. Before we get into Q&A, we have a lot of questions that have come through, by the way, so I'm really excited about getting these in. So before we get into Q&A, one thing, or a couple things I'd like to kind of bring up is also on top of, for a 4th takeaway, I would say even if the majority of your traffic comes from the desktop, do not ignore mobile, because not having mobile functionality can, in the long run, affect how your site ranks as a whole, right? Between mobile, desktop, whatever it may be. And then also, yesterday, it's really the first time, we were just talking about this on the SEJ editorial call right before the webinar, but for the first time ever, I can remember Google giving a 5 to 6 month forewarning on a possible penalty. So Google yesterday made an announcement that in January they will be basically punishing sites that have a massive app pop-up or interstitial overlay within mobile. And they've been marking these as not being mobile friendly for a while and reporting accordingly in Webmaster Tools, but they did announce and really gave a deadline, so to speak, of not only will they be issuing a punishment, but also kind of a what to do type scenario. So it not only is the first time I remember Google giving so much of a warning in terms of a possible penalty or filtering, but also kind of a, hey, what to do so this does not happen to you style thing. So they announced that, not only can you not serve specific types of pop-ups or interstitials or overlays within the mobile experience, but what kinds are acceptable by Google. Any thoughts there, Anne?
Absolutely. I think so many people were affected and hurt by Mobilegeddon. I think that Google went from trying to make everything just secrets and lies. I think it went to like, hey, actually, can you do this? Because, there's so much bloat in web pages now because of all these tools that we have that make it easy for us to get things off the ground quickly, right? So you grab a template, you deploy it, it comes with all these extra resources that we don't need. So I think Google is really just trying to say, hey, let's think about the user here, and, I think it's been pretty clear in the past because I've read a lot of their documentation, but I think they're genuinely wanting the user to have better experiences. And so, I actually did not know about that announcement, but I'm not surprised. And I think it's great. I think it's great because the user is the one who's going to benefit from that, because they just know what's working and what's not. But yeah, I think it's unprecedented. I don't recall them ever doing this far in advance. And so hopefully that will allow us to make active moves to prevent, and will allow SEOs to do that. So I think that's, if anything, validates how important SEO is for mobile.
Yeah, absolutely. And, from a conspiracy theory standpoint, too, they also announced, the AdSense team announced that you can now add, I think it's unlimited ad placements on your site. So the same day that mobile announced that they recommend the takedown of giant interstitials and pops, they also announced that you can add more ads to your site. So I'm not sure if those were planned, but I thought it was kind of interesting they announced both of that on the same day.
I don't think it was planned. I think that they're just so big, one arm doesn't know what the other one is doing. But that's hilarious. So it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, but just because you can put ads everywhere, I really wouldn't. And that seems so contradictory. It'll be interesting to see what follows.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, let's get to the viewer question. So Addison Severns asks, how would you utilize AMP in an e-commerce strategy? So how can you plug in AMP to e-commerce, and how far along is Google and I guess the eBay example gotten in that process?
Right. So I couldn't speak to eBay or the larger sites necessarily, but in an e-commerce setting, I mean, I think this is, your strongest thing is going to be rich snippets so that you can build trust. I cannot say 100% that there is a very clear there's a very clear use case for AMP in commerce yet, because AMP wasn't designed for e-commerce. AMP was actually designed for publishers, and so those are two very different goals, right? So AMP is open source. It's got some heavyweight partners, but I don't see Amazon, eBay, or Alibaba moving there. I don't think it's something I would do yet, to be honest. I think e-commerce marketing, great. Use it to get content out, but I wouldn't trust it because it's stripped down and it's not designed for it. I would not actually suggest for commerce. I would instead focus on your rich snippets so that you can give get some trust from your users and showing reviews and transparency, product previews. That's where I would spend my time right now for mobile optimization, not necessarily AMP.
Gotcha. Yeah, sounds good. I'm in agreement too. I do remember reading that like Project AMP has been testing things for product pages, but that isn't out yet. The eBay thing was more so like product listings, where
Yeah,
that may make sense, like search results to view on mobile, or category listings, which isn't really that much different than a WordPress category listing or WordPress list. So again, I agree. Make that pretty heavy on the commerce side, and especially if from an overall e-commerce SEO perspective too, because you may find that you get much more mobile traffic with your content marketing than you would with your product marketing. Yet that content marketing sets you up for the retargeting and ads to hit directly those folks with action-oriented, calls to action, right? That's redundant, but get them on your site, get them viewing whatever they need to view. You can serve ads in AMP. Those ads can drop cookies, which then lead to retargeting in the future.
absolutely, absolutely.
Tyler asks, any idea how AMP and page speed in general might end up affecting AdWords quality score?
Interesting.
AdWords question.
Yeah, I'm definitely more, I'm more on the organic side of the house. I use paid for testing. I use paid for experimentation and keyword research. So I may not be necessarily the best person to answer that, but I don't see evidence of that yet, at least in the experience that I have. I think it's something we should expect to have happen down the road, but I definitely don't, I don't think that there's evidence of that yet, at least not that what I've seen. I think, yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to you because it's not really my domain.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet either on the AdWords side. Like, it makes sense, and I'm sure. Well, actually, yeah, I do remember Google putting out an announcement there that they were going to that AMP was going to support landing pages in the future too. So I'm sure that's going to have something to do with your account, but neither one of us are AdWords experts, and I wouldn't want to
Exactly.
forecast that.
Right. 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 I was a beta tester years ago. I was very early to the PPC platform, but it's definitely not my core competency. But I mean, I have seen, I think the first big pass was to get publishers to get news. And I think all of these other things like product pages, landing pages, I think we can expect those to be secondary priority.
Yeah. And also a reminder on the AMP side too, to our viewers/listeners, is that in July Google announced that they were going to expand AMP out of Google News and out of the news carousel and into the normal organic results. We haven't seen too many examples of that in the wild yet, but it is important to, especially if you're running a WordPress blog off of your site or any kind of blog or content area, and you have high mobile traffic, to utilize AMP on your WordPress. There are some plugins, but as Anne was saying, typically those do not work necessarily out of the box. You do have to tweak accordingly. You'll probably see a bunch of AMP errors appear immediately within Webmaster Tools, and then it's just a question of really trimming those down. A lot of those seem to be calls to different images which aren't necessarily in the AMP format, I guess, and other things that transfer over. So yeah, it's becoming more and more of a big deal. And did you see the study, Anne, on whether or not normal users who aren't SEOs know what AMP is?
No, but that's hilarious. I love that.
So I had assumed that since there was a lightning bolt next to the results in Google, and there's a lightning bolt next to the instant articles in Facebook, that people would just know that lightning bolt means fast loading. But I think there was a study, and it was a really low percentage of non-SEO / non-internet marketers actually knew what that meant. I'll shoot over the link afterwards. It was done by Glenn Gabe.
That's really
That was
interesting.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the reason that it would matter for the rest of the world is that it's higher up. I mean, you know,
Yep.
it's
True.
in a carousel. So, you know, it's not a ranking factor. And the other thing, just quickly, is that it's not a ranking factor yet. So it's not necessarily 100% slam dunk, but think about click-through rates, domain authority, higher prominence, you know, these faster load times. I mean, it's not spoken yet, but I think we're going to see the bump from it. I know I have on the sites we've deployed it.
Here's a question for you on mobile experience. So there's different tools and solutions like lazy load that will load images as they're being scrolled on the mobile experience. And then one thing we've noticed is a read more or read entire article button sometimes after the first 3 paragraphs on mobile devices for mostly publishing sites as well. Have you seen any ways that speeding up the loading via lazy load helps from an SEO perspective, and or using the read more button?
Absolutely. I've noticed that as well. Read more is a really good way for publishers to front load, you know, sort of these assets and then pull down later. So people expect to wait a second after they read more, but it's sort of in cache, and so they can look at it. I have noticed a difference, and you know, I have absolutely seen that it's helping click-through rates because, you know, like I said in the presentation, you know, the average person wants to wait 3 or 4 seconds before they start scrolling. So absolutely, it's going to improve click-through rate. It's going to lead to higher search prominence because people are, you know, digging through it, and there's a lot of competition. You know, there's so much competition that people are getting impatient, and so I would argue these bigger projects like Instant Articles and AMP are spoiling the user in a way that is going to make it that is the expectation moving forward, that this is how user behavior is now going to be. We're all kind of being trained to expect things faster. So, you know, people not getting what we want, you know, we know that leads to lower click-through rates, and therefore you're going to drop in search.
Yeah, I think so as well. And you know, just one clarification too on AMP. So those pages are hosted on Google.com, but if you have your canonical, I believe it's the canonical setup within AMP, then when those pages are shared, tweeted, linked to, that all goes over to your main host page or your main domain. So it's not like if if someone is linking to an article they found on Google AMP, they're sending links to Google. It's not quite the way it works. One quick question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, and one last thing. It also changes the URLs, so that's another thing to watch out for.
Yes, it does. One last question. This is a Canadian question, by the way. Is do you know of any links or reliable data on how Canadians in general, or more so anyone, are using these new technologies? So rural versus urban. So point being, I'm probably thinking of someone who lives in an urban environment in the city, they may be commuting more on their phone, using public transportation, etc. Or if someone is more rural, they're driving to work or something like that. But have you noticed any geo changes in terms of mobile versus desktop usage?
Absolutely. I think there have been studies on that. There definitely is research out there. I can't think of a name of a specific place to find it, but I know that I've seen them. I think, you know, what we're seeing more in urban settings is a higher consumption of video on mobile. And that's definitely true for those who commute and do not have to drive. So people on trains, they're actually like binging their Netflix instead of maybe necessarily you know, emails or tweeting. And so we're seeing, and Mary Meeker, I think, had some great research on this in her presentation this year. She does an annual presentation and just does these great statistics. So if you look for Mary Maker's report earlier this year, she talks about how the consumption is increased so largely on mobile, and especially, you know, people who have this like 30 minutes to an hour a day. They're commuting on a train, so that would be somebody in an urban setting, probably. They're watching video, and I've seen it on my commute into my office in San Francisco. People are sitting there watching videos, and so that's just sort of an interesting use case and sort of trend. And then, you know, but I think that specific study might help get some more useful information.
Well, great, Anne. And I'm not sure if you knew or not, but when you said urban setting, almost on cue, I heard street noise from outside of your office happening.
Yeah.
So that was well planned.
Yeah, we're on Market Street.
Again, thank you so much. It's Anne Ahola Ward from CircleClick, and again, SEJ Summit speaker, and now an SEJ ThinkTank speaker. So you can put that on your LinkedIn.
I'm super honored. Thank you.
It's been, like I said, it's been great having you. I really enjoyed your presentation at Santa Monica, and just to let everyone know, right after we're finished with the webinar, we will be sending out a recap video. We're also going to be placing Anne's webinar on our SEJ YouTube channel. And also, I think Danielle can send out, I do believe we have your presentation on SlideShare from Santa Monica, but we'll be uploading this one to SlideShare as well. So all of the great information, along with Anne's contact info, will be shared with everyone that's attended today's Think Tank webinar. So again, I'd like to thank you, Anne, for taking the time out of your extremely busy day to do this. It's been a real pleasure, and I think we've all learned a lot.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be a part of the Think Tank, and thank you to you and your staff, and it's always a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And just to let everyone know, our next SEJ Think Tank will be on the advertising side of things. So we're going to be hosting the next SEJ Think Tank on September 7th, same bat time, same bat channel, with Rocco Baldassari from Zebra Advertising. Rocco is going to be discussing how to boost revenues with cross-channel advertising, so social, search, everything else. So any AdWords or paid search marketing questions that you had today, please keep them for next week, and in 2 weeks, and be sure to attend. And don't jump off yet. Right after we close the presentation, we're going to be serving you a survey. So please take the time to let us know how we can do things better here at the SEJ Think Tank. Again, it's been a privilege. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks again, Anne. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.